Good afternoon. This is Evan Wesselman, and I hope to be enlightening you with some information about what it means to be a Sami artist and an exploration of the Sami arts. When I started my research, there was one big question I was grappling with at the time, and that was how does being a Sami impact being an artist? Are these two things somehow connected, or are they independent of one another? And is the relationship work one way and not the other? Upon the completion of my research, I was in fact able to determine that there is a relationship that exists between both being a Sami and being an artist. Many Sami artists of today hold on tight to their culture and incorporate it through their art, as seen in the usage of traditional materials, colors, and their pictorial language, meaning the motifs and themes they decide to use. But before we get into more detail on that, it's first important to note the brief history involving Sami art through the ages. Art has been an integral part of Sami society since around 60,000 CE. The earliest known drawings are actually the cave drawings found at Alta, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. These drawings depict a wide array of what Sami culture once was, including reindeer hunting and various forms of fertility rituals. In addition to this, there was also the runic drawings found on the shaman drums. These drawings usually consisted of pantheistic depictions of the many gods contained within the Sami culture. Another example of the traditional Sami arts is the duoji, or the traditional handicrafts. These handicrafts can be nearly anything, including the carvings on knives, cups constructed from wood, or even the shaman drums could even be considered duoji. Usually they're constructed of what is considered traditional materials, meaning reindeer bone, reindeer hide, and any wood that could be found. Usually the duoji is something that is handed down from generation to generation, in physical form and in the ability and knowledge of how to construct them. This means that they still exist today. However, they exist under a different context. Due to cultural contact with other Western cultures, the duoji has been slowly changing over the course of time. From a Western standpoint of fine art, the Sami were a little late to enter into the game from both a pictorial and sculptural standpoint. It wasn't until the early 20th century that such famed artists as John Savio, Johan Turi, and Nils Nilsson's Goom were able to incorporate traditional Sami culture into their oil paintings, woodcuts, and drawings. Their depictions of Sami life helped to bring a wider knowledge of the Sami culture to the Western world. Sami art continues to flourish in the modern day. However, instead of solely focusing on simple depictions of reindeer and other traditional motifs, they instead take these motifs and use them as means of identifying their culture and how they can retain both their traditional heritage while attempting to remain in contact with the bigger world. This idea is best summed up by the famed Sami painter Synnøve Pearson in her quote, "I'm from a small village, but I received a Western art education and I've tried to fit these points of departure together without hurting myself." Pearson is not alone in her viewpoint. In fact, many Sami artists are becoming increasingly more Westernly trained in the modern era. In many ways, these artists are taking their traditional viewpoints, updating them, and making them relevant to the struggles of today's Samis. These viewpoints were strongly influenced by the Masi group, whose ideology was built on producing art distinctly Sami, yet at the same time with a far more global perspective and approach in mind. Now that we've been brought to the present, we can now look at how these different elements are helping to shape up what is now modern Sami art. The first thing that many modern Sami artists are taking from tradition is the use of the materials that have been often used in the past. This is best seen in the works of Ivar Jaks, a very politically minded Sami artist who's based out of Kautokeino now. His work combines both traditional Sami materials such as reindeer horns and antlers, the Sami mythology, and his blunt political ideology. Aj Gaup is another esteemed Sami sculptor who combines the same ideologies within his work. He's the one featured on the bottom right, whereas Jaks is the one on the top left. In addition to using traditional materials, today many Sami painters are also incorporating the use of many traditional colors into their works. These colors are most obviously derived from the Gotki, the traditional Sami garb, which is actually also considered duoji. Fun fact. This idea of incorporating the traditional colors into oil paintings is best viewed through the works of Synnøve Pearson. In addition, the pastel works of Trygve Lund Gudmundsson also exemplify this idea well. Their overemphasized use of these colors help to really display what it truly means to be Sami to them. Pearson's work is on the top left, and Gudmundsson's is on the bottom right. Many artists today are also incorporating pantheistic markings into their works. These pantheistic markings obviously originate from the drum symbols, as I had mentioned earlier. This idea is best exemplified through the works of Hans Ragnar Matheson, which is the picture on the left of the screen. He is known for producing maps of the world. However, within the center of each map is always Sapmi. In addition to these things, there's also the incorporation of the small symbols. As you can see, he incorporates many reindeer into the maps, which look an awful lot like they have come from a drum. In addition, Gaup also incorporates these into his sculptures, where he scratches them into the surface. However, I couldn't really actually find any pictures of them. Niels Aslak Volkepai has also incorporated the traditional Sami drum symbols into his works of poetry as means of illustration. He does this because he feels there is a, quote, spiritual connection between me and the symbols. In conclusion, the Sami have always maintained a rich artistic culture throughout their years, as seen through their approaches to the handicrafts and drum markings. Although they were a little late to the fine art scene, they were able to make a late comeback. Nowadays, Sami artists are attempting to define themselves as both Sami and a member of the global art community. They maintain their roots by incorporating traditional materials, colors, and pictorial motifs into their works. I would like to take a moment to thank you for having watched this. I hope you learned something about the Sami art world.